Human thought creates reality not metaphorically but literally. We live in an age where the most basic questions of life are often brushed aside as if they were obvious. How to live? How to live a valuable life and live? Is it a purely biological verb or a silent, day-by-day ethical work? Inamori Kazuo, a ceramics engineer turned founder of 2 global corporations, did not start her life with any special advantages. No superior intelligence, no noble birth, no noble mentor, only one thing he persistently honed like a stone carver, personality, and it was that personality, not strategy, ambition or luck that created all the seemingly extraordinary results. But what is more worth pondering is if life is a flow, are we swimming according to our truest selves or just temporary pieces of social expectations? If character is the essence of achievement, why does today's education and training system almost forget it? The book you are about to enter does not give advice, it does not try to convince, it simply presents real experiences, unadorned thoughts. With a voice that came from a place that had been through both light and darkness. And if you are quiet enough to listen, you may not be the same person when you walk out of these pages. Because maybe the question is not how to live an extraordinary life but how to live without regrets before summarizing this book. As always, we encourage listeners to buy and read the book to fully appreciate its content. Now let's get started. Summary of this book. There are times in life when you look up and find everything around you a question. Why is life so crowded? How did I end up here? Why do all efforts turn to dust? I used to be like that. A graduate of this era who is unemployed, suffering from old age, living in the suffocation of failure. I was going to be a homeowner. Yes, I knocked on the door of a gang because when the outside world rejects you, a part of you starts thinking that living in the underground world, at least their people are grateful and keep their word. Luckily, I didn't step through that door, but I did step into something even more terrifying. A tiny ceramic company on the verge of bankruptcy, no pay, no future. The place I thought was the bottom of a person's life. But from that bottom, I began to realize what I believe to be the core law of human life. What is on your mind? Your life will be like that. You may not believe me. It sounds like a positive speech, but I'm not talking positively. I talk physics. I am talking about the practical power of thinking. Something that can control your work results, your destiny, and even the cash flow of your company. You think it is impossible, you will not see how. You think so. You start looking out onto the road. I saw cell phones when people thought it was science fiction. I saw the subscription price, the number of users, the speed of availability all in my head. Years before it came true, not because I was good at predicting but because I thought about it so much that it started to appear as a real scene full of colors, details, lines and even voices. When you think to that extent, you have crossed the boundary of ideas. You are entering the realm of reality creation, but not everyone thinks that far. And the reason is not because they are not smart enough, but because they are not ambitious enough. There is a simple formula that has changed the way I live and operate. Life is thinking multiplied by enthusiasm multiplied by ability, multiplication, not addition. That means if your thinking has negative points such as selfishness, pessimism, resentment, then no matter how talented you are, how passionate you are, the result will still be a negative number. I once intended to become a mafia like I said, because I failed the university entrance exam as I wanted, no one accepted me, I was sick and felt my life was hopeless, my mind at that time was filled with resentment. I hate society, I hate myself. And so it was, my life brought nothing but things I hated. It was only when I was lying in my hospital bed reading a book about the mind that I realized that maybe I was attracting bad things because I was always thinking bad thoughts. I started to change, nothing drastic, just little by little, I chose to think good thoughts. Even though my life hasn't gotten better, I'm still criticized, my salary is still delayed, and I still work in a company that's about to go bankrupt. But I think this job, no matter how small, I will do it to the best of my ability. I buried myself in experimenting. I brought both pots into the research room. I think even in my sleep. I dream of new compounds. And then I invented a new ceramic material. No one thinks of me. An unknown engineer was able to do what a leading American company had just done a year earlier. Not only that, I do it in a completely different way. That was my first brush with what I call the wisdom of the universe. And later I returned to that treasure many times by thinking deeply, by working hard with an honest attitude and a desire to create. Some people think that if you want to hone your soul, you have to become a monk. I don't think so. I believe the best place to practice is the workplace. Just love what you do and give it your all. You are cultivating character. Sweat drops on the pottery workshop, on the conference table, on the production floor. If it drops from a sincere heart, it will become the material that builds human character. You don't have to be smart, you just have to work hard. And most importantly, you must see what you want to create. I once told my staff that our products are too hard to touch. It means so perfect that just by looking at it you can feel it's sharp, without any extra detail. You have to see it clearly and vividly in your mind before it appears in real life. And to do that, you have to want it bad enough, to the point of madness. What is the difference between a thought and a belief? I think it's how attached your mind is to the image in your head. When you just think, you are still open to changing it if something new comes along. But once you believe it, it becomes the pivot for all your actions no matter what the world is like out there. I used to work in a room the size of a toilet. No modern machines, no goggles, no one to help. I tried a recipe 1,000 times, heating it up, cooling it down, measuring it again, correcting my mistakes. I suffered chemical burns and toxic gas poisoning, but I did not stop working because in my mind a clear image of a new product appeared, a type of super durable, heat-resistant, conductive ceramic. I could see it in my hand even though I had nothing at the time. Years later, when I was leading a team of engineers, I often asked them a very strange question. Can you see the product you are inventing in your head? If they say no, I know they haven't started. If they say yes and can give every detail, I know success is near. That visualization is not a vague imagination. It is a trainable ability like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And if you visualize every day with all your life, you will start to get into that flow of creativity where you no longer try to think but ideas will come to you. But there is one condition, your mind must be pure. I don't use that word in a religious sense. I use it in the technical sense. A polluted mind cannot pick up subtle signals. If you are obsessed with fame, jealousy, and anger, you will not be able to connect with something greater than yourself. I have met very talented people who could not create anything extraordinary because they were so talented for themselves. They do it for their ego, they seek their own satisfaction. But when you do something for others, for society, for the next generation, you will open up another frequency. And from there I began to see suspicious coincidences, ideas I thought of, people I needed to meet, doors I didn't expect appeared one after another. Not because I pray, but because my mind has been purified by honest work and by good intentions. We live in a material world but are governed by the most invisible thing, the mind. No one teaches that in school, but real life is full of examples. You walk into a room where someone is angry, you can feel it. Even if they don't say anything, a leader with a selfish mindset, employees can feel it immediately. Even though no one points out a product made with heart. The client knows without being able to explain why the mind is a wave and we are always emitting it. So I told myself to do everything with all my heart and soul and not to cheat even 1,000th part. Because even if others don't know, the universe will know, and you will know too. Ethics is a bookish subject, but later I realized that ethics is the most profound technique of living. It is a way for you to connect with an invisible force greater than you, a way for you to walk through life without fear. And that's what made me realize that the only way to turn thoughts into reality is action. But action must be based on absolute faith and upright thinking. When I opened my first company Kai, I had no money, no reputation, no customers, just a few young engineers. Worked together in a small workshop. But we believe that we will live by making the best, kindest products and will never cheat for profit. You know what happens? Those products go viral even without marketing. Customers introduced each other. A company in the US once asked, "What is different about your products?" I just answer. We put our hearts into it. They laugh, but then they order because they feel they are not just buying a product, they are buying the heart that is wrapped inside that product. Someone asked me, how do I know if my thinking is right or wrong? That is a very deep question. Because thoughts are something that no one can verify. It happens in our heads and we always tend to think we are thinking correctly. But I learned a very simple test. If that thought makes you feel at ease, in harmony with everyone, close to nature and the universe, then it is a correct thought. If on the contrary, if it makes you feel isolated, anxious, comparative, jealous, then it is a distorted thought. Thinking does not need to be logically correct, but it must be correct with the great flow of life. It has to connect you to something larger than you, to nature, to community, to the future. That's why I believe that right thinking leads to right action creates right results. Many people think that success is the result of luck or strategy. But I don't believe so. I have seen too many intelligent people fail because they were wrong in their thinking, and also seen many ordinary people create extraordinary things simply because they had a pure belief and never gave up. Many years later, when I became the president of a large corporation, I still kept the habit of thinking carefully, doing immediately, and doing with all my heart. I dare not take lightly any thought that arises in my mind, because I know that a selfish thought today will create a wrong result tomorrow. I am not perfect. There were times when I got angry, there were times when I thought about revenge. There were times when I felt hopeless. But that's why I know the value of a right thought. It's like a compass. Not because you are always on the right track, but because every time you lose your way you know the way back. In business, I do not put profit goals first. I ask, what value are we creating for society? If there is no answer, I stop. If so, I will do it. Many people think that's unrealistic, but look at the longest-lived companies in the world. They all have a philosophy of life that goes beyond silver. They have a core ideology, a fundamental value, and they preserve that through generations. When you do something just to make money, you may make money, but then you will lose it. Because money is something that goes with the times. The value you live and die to create will stay. It will attract money, attract good people, attract luck. That's how I understand turning thoughts into reality, not by dreaming but by thinking it through. Right mindset, big enough desire, and relentless action. Life does not require being too clever, no need for tricks, no need to calculate gains and losses too much. What you need is a vivid picture in your mind of what you want to create and a fire that never goes out. If you have that, no matter where you start, no matter what your circumstances, no matter who you are, you can create something extraordinary. Start with thinking, but don't stop at thinking. Take action and act as if you are the only one in the world who can do it. People often think that success is the result of smart decisions. I think differently. If you rely only on intelligence, you will go fast, but you can also fall very deep. It is not intelligence that keeps you from falling, but the principle of life. What is the principle? Is something that does not change. It is the foundation that lies deep beneath all your behaviors, reactions, and choices. In a world where everything is moving, where information and logic are constantly changing, only principles will keep you from getting swept away. I have been faced many times with seemingly dead-end situations where, using common logic, I would have chosen the easier, more beneficial, and more productive way. But I always wonder if this is true in terms of human principles. If not, I won't do it even if it costs money. Even if it costs me life, even if it slows me down, I won't do it. Many people think it's a lie, but when you live long enough, you'll find that integrity is the most lasting asset. Because when you keep your principles, you keep the trust of others, you keep your self-respect, you sleep well, you look in the mirror without shame. And then little by little, the world will begin to believe you. When I ran Co's, we didn't have complicated administrative systems, we didn't have cumbersome administrative processes. The only thing I emphasize is to think and act based on correct principles and principles. And a strange thing happened, one by one the people in the organization began to self-correct. No need for anyone to check, they still choose to be kind, no need for anyone to force them. They remain honest because they know, not because of fear of punishment, but because they do not want to betray the trust we built together. In a more modern society, people easily confuse wisdom with correctness. You can circumvent the law, you can hide it, you can manipulate it so subtly that no one will detect it. But you always know. And your inner faith will slowly erode each time you deny the principle. One time, a senior executive of the company proposed a business plan that would bring in tens of billions of yen. It's just a bit of a loophole, not illegal but not entirely legitimate. I asked him a question, do you dare tell this detail to your son? He was silent, we didn't do that. Years later, the rival company that had taken on the job collapsed. Not because of the incident itself, but because it opens up a whole range of other wrong choices. Once you give up on a principle once, it gets easier the next time and eventually you will no longer know which way is up. So, I always tell myself that principle is the guiding principle of my life. If you are lost, don't ask others, don't ask the internet, don't ask the market. Ask if this is correct from a human perspective. If not, stop. If you do it even if others laugh. There are people who are very intelligent, good at analyzing, quick as a computer. They predict the market accurately, react to changes flexibly, and come up with sharp strategies. But if you notice, there are two types of people in that group. Some people grow steadily and are respected, while others just flash in the pan and fall quickly. I always observe this and notice a pattern. The difference lies in whether they live by principles or not. Principles are not dead rules. It is not a dogmatic moral proposition but a natural thing like the law of heaven and earth, like breathing, like the operation of this world when not manipulated by humans. For example, if you treat others well, others will trust you. Whatever you do with a pure mind, the results will usually last. You help others unconditionally, people remember you forever even though you never ask for anything in return. Those things don't need to be proven because you see them as true by intuition, by experience, by life. I used to ask young employees, imagine you have to make a big business decision, no one is supervising, only you know the huge profit, but there is one detail that makes it not completely fair. Do you do it? Some people answered, yes, if no one finds out, I don't blame them, but I don't give them important tasks. Because I believe that whoever loses the right is building a house on sand. As the company grows stronger, there is one thing I always hold fast to. Never let the company lose its principles just for profit, even when we go public, when shareholders put pressure, when the media reports contrary news. I still ask all leaders to put principles before growth targets, and I discovered this. People who live by principles will attract people who also live by principles. Just like clean water will find clean water. Like a river receives clean springs. Gradually, the company becomes a group of good people and so the strength of that organization becomes outstanding. When I ran Japan Alex, the airline was bankrupt and in the process of rebuilding. I didn't bring strategy, I brought principles. I told all employees, do the right thing one thing at a time. Don't worry about financial indicators. Serve passengers as if they were your own family. Be honest with your colleagues. At first they were skeptical, but then a strange thing happened. They started to feel proud of their work. They started to fix the little things they had previously overlooked. They started to care about each other not because of company policy but because they wanted to do the right thing. And in just a short time, the airline returned to the market with soaring profits not because of financial tricks but because the real inner strength was awakened from the people. Principles are not something you learn, they are something you live. You don't need to read hundreds of ethics books to become a good person. Just ask yourself this question: if you put yourself in the other person's shoes, would you accept it? If not, don't do it. If you do it with all your heart. When you live by principles, you don't need to worry about the results all the time because you know the right results will come, even if not immediately. It's a kind of confidence. The silence that I have accumulated over many years of working, failing, getting up, observing life and re-examining everything I believe. You don't have to race with the world. You just have to go your own way, and principles are that way. Many people think that living by principles is slow. But what I have found is that people who live by principles often have a more sustainable speed than anyone else because they are not distracted, not caught up in the small things, not forced to turn around every time they encounter mistakes of their own making. They make fewer mistakes and therefore save energy to go further. In a meeting with the management team, I once said, "Stop if this makes your conscience uneasy." No matter how promising the profits are, some people don't understand. They ask, so how long will it take for the company to grow? I say the right question is not how long, but will that growth make us proud? Because if it doesn't make you proud, sooner or later you will pay for it. Many years ago there were a rival company copied Kyo's technology, launched the product to the market faster and cheaper. The media praised them for being innovative, investors poured money into them. I kept quiet. I told the team, let's just build the product with all our dignity, users will recognize it. 3 years later, that company was sued for breach of contract, trust lost, stocks fell, and we did nothing but keep the principles, still continuing to develop sustainably. Keeping the principles is not an ideal, it is a life strategy. As a founder, an operator, a leader, you will have the right to choose the easier, faster and sometimes more cunning path. But it is in those times that your true nature will appear. And if you want to build something that can last, you must build it with bricks of integrity. Otherwise, no matter how tall the building is, it will shake as soon as the wind blows. People often say, don't be too rigid, I agree. You shouldn't live like a moral machine, but you can't live like a blade of grass in the wind either. What is needed is flexibility within the framework of principles, like a tree trunk that is soft but susceptible to worms. Whenever I feel confused, I don't ask my subordinates, I don't ask my friends, I don't ask experts. I ask, if I were a normal person with a good heart, what would I do in this situation? And the answer is always simple, clear and powerful. That's why I wrote this chapter. Not to advise you to live morally but to share that principles are not only right but beneficial in the long run. The more you live by principles, the less you need to fear being wrong. Because even if you are wrong, you will be forgiven by others and by yourself. Because you are not wrong by malice, but wrong in the effort to live right. One of the truths I realized after decades of working is that talent does not determine the future, personality does. At first I didn't believe it like many others. I thought smart, sharp, strategic people would go further, and they did go very fast. They make others admire. They can solve problems in the blink of an eye, come up with ideas that leave people in awe. But then I see them stumble, and when they stumble there is nothing to pick them up because they have not built a strong enough character to lift them up. I have seen good people defeated by their own ego. They cannot admit fault. They blame others. They refuse to take a step back, they look down on their colleagues. And then when the storm comes, they are alone. Meanwhile, I find slow people not so outstanding. But always patient, honest, diligent in respecting others, gradually progressing step by step like water seeping deep into the ground. At some point, they become pillars, not just because they get the job done, but because people want to go with them. That's when I understood, personality is what supports the whole career. I don't say this as a dogmatic philosophy. I speak from real experience. Kyocera was not built by the best people. In fact, many good people left the company because they couldn't stand the overly practical environment. They want politics, want internal competition, want to work less and earn more. But the kiosk is not the place for that kind of person. We choose people who live with dignity. Don't have to be great, but be trustworthy. No need to argue well but have to live truthfully. You don't have to be a leader, but you have to be someone others want to follow. And I see them as the ones who create the real strength of the organization. But personality is not something that is given. It is something that is honed day by day like a rough stone that needs to be polished, like a knife that needs to be forged. And the best forge of character is the work you do every day. You don't have to go to the mountains to meditate, you just have to face yourself in every little thing. Am I lazy today? Did I lie to anyone? Am I jealous, gossiping, or taking credit? Do I really listen to others? If you answer those questions honestly, you are building character. And when character is forged deep enough, it becomes a force field around you. Others will feel it, they will trust you, they will assign work, they will want to accompany you. Not because you are outstanding but because you make them feel secure in my life. There are many people whose names and faces I don't remember, but there is one thing I remember very clearly. They are honorable people, and that is more noble than fame. I didn't study management in college. I don't read Western philosophy or leadership books. All I have learned has come from the collisions of work and from observing the human soul when faced with gain, failure, hurt, and fame. And what I discovered is that character is not revealed in success, it is revealed in hardship. A person who can speak well, make good promises, and behave politely. When everything goes well, but watch them when they are misunderstood, when their rights are violated, when no one is on their side. Then the true personality will appear. The patient or the complainer, the responsible or the runaway, the self-reflective or the self-indulgent. And that's why I always pay attention to how my employees behave under pressure, not to judge them but to know where they are on their journey of inner development. Because I believe character is something that can be developed. No one is born kind, patient, or generous. We only become who we are through the days of making mistakes and daring to face ourselves. When recruiting people to Kyos, I do not put much emphasis on academic achievements. I observe attitude. I listen to how they talk about other people. I looked into their eyes as I told them about the past. I want to know if this person knows how to reflect on himself, if he wants to live a decent life, if he dares to admit his mistakes. Because if they have those things, I believe they will grow up, go far, and become someone that others want to go with, not just work with. Once, a new employee made a mistake that caused a major client to cancel the contract, causing a loss of hundreds of millions of yen. He came to me, trembling and bowing his head in apology. I asked, since it happened, how many times have you thought about it? He said it more than 100 times. And every time I feel a pain in my heart. I do not blame, I do not fire. I say people who know pain when doing wrong will not repeat it. Years later, he became a department head not because he was smart, but because he had a mind that knew how to grow. In life, people often try to hide the weak and dark parts of themselves. But I think it's when you dare to look into the darkness that you begin to truly change. We all have selfishness, laziness, desire, jealousy. That's not bad. It's bad only when you don't realize it. When you pretend you are always right, always good, always noble. You will never improve yourself. I learned this from my own failures. When I was young, I was hot-tempered. Or judge or impose on others. And every time, I feel hurt not only to the other person but also to myself. I came home restless and had trouble sleeping. One day, I started keeping a record of the times I misbehaved, not to blame myself but to avoid repeating it. I call it personality diary. It was from writing down each small mistake that I saw clearly who I was, and step by step, I corrected it. No one becomes a good person just by taking advice. Only when you touch the shame inside you and choose to face it, do you begin to hone your soul. Later on, when I grew up and developed more and more, when I stood in front of thousands of employees, when people called me president, founder, successful person, I still couldn't stop thinking about the two words, personality, because I knew clearly, if I let it go just a little bit, everything could fall apart. I have seen many big companies fail not because of the market, not because of lack of capacity but because the leaders could not maintain their dignity. One lie, one dishonest decision, one angry outburst and trust cracks, the organization falls apart. If you ask me what is the most valuable asset of a person's life, I will answer without hesitation. Personality. No one can take it away from you unless you throw it away yourself. And once you have character, everything else will come. Money, prestige, relationships, trust, all are natural results, no need to pursue. But to maintain character, you must practice every day. I call it soul polishing. Not to polish for others to see but to polish for yourself to see bright. Every morning when I wake up, I ask myself, can I live better today than yesterday? Can I be more humble, more understanding, less angry? Not to be praised but to be worthy of yourself. I also train my employees that we're not just talking about product engineering, market share, we're talking about being a human being, about being decent in the workplace, about maintaining integrity even when no one is watching. One time, a young engineer came to me and asked, Mr. President, I'm not as good as others. Is there any chance that I can't succeed? I looked at him and said, if you work with a pure heart, constantly learn, live kindly and never give up, then even if you are not called successful, you are still a great person. There are many ways to measure a person's life, reputation, wealth, achievements. But there is one way to measure that I believe is the most profound. The steadfastness of the soul. When you face suffering, can you maintain your love? When you are at the top, are you still humble? When you are misunderstood, are you generous enough not to retaliate? These are questions I still carry with me every day even when my hair is gray. And I believe that if you can answer with actions, not words, you are a stronger person than anyone else. See work as a mirror of personality. Every mistake is an opportunity to correct yourself. Every conflict is an opportunity to understand others. Every day at work is a life lesson. You do not need to look far for an environment to develop yourself. It is right here. This is in what you are doing. And if you live with all your being, sincerely, honestly, and persistently, there is no need to worry about where you are going. Because your personality will lead the way, and that is something that will never be lost, even when everything else is gone. There is a strange thing in life, when you live for others, you receive more for yourself than at first. That sounds paradoxical. Because in a competitive world, everyone is worried about keeping their part, getting what they need. People who think too much of others are often considered weak. But I have lived through nearly a lifetime. And what I learned most deeply is that altruism is not a sacrifice, it is the wisest and most sustainable way of life. When I was young, I was a selfish person. I often felt jealous, often thought that others did not understand me, often saw myself as a victim. And those thoughts made me miserable. I worked hard, my emotions were always depressed, and my heart always felt deprived. Until one day I read a line in an ancient book, "Live for others." I didn't understand it right away, but I tried. I tried to do a small thing instead of arguing to prove myself right. I kept quiet and listened. Instead of taking the good part for myself, I gave it to my colleagues. Instead of thinking only of my own interests, I thought about how others would be affected. What was the result? I felt more relieved, I slept better, and surprisingly, others began to care about me, help me, and trust me. I didn't change the world, but I changed the way I lived, and the world around me changed accordingly. When I founded Koz, I set an unwritten rule. Every major decision must consider the interests of others. Do customers benefit? Are employees disadvantaged? Does society gain anything? We don't pursue profits at all costs. We want products to bring real value. No flashy advertising, no overpromises, no forcing employees to sacrifice to reach numbers. Beautiful. Instead, we create an environment where everyone is respected, everyone has a voice. And the strange thing is that when you live with humanity, business goes more smoothly. Loyal customers, dedicated employees, trusted partners. All of those things cannot be bought with money, they can only be given with the heart. Living altruistically does not mean giving up on yourself, on the contrary, it is the most powerful way to develop yourself. Because you will learn how to control your ego, learn to be patient, know how to listen, know how to put yourself in the shoes of others. Those qualities. No school can teach you, only life can teach you if you are willing to open your heart. I once asked a young leader, "Do you truly love your employees?" He said, "I want them to do well so that the company can achieve its goals." I said, that is not love, it is wanting to control. Love is when you want them to be happy, even if it does not help your performance. Altruism starts from there, from a perspective that is not from self-interest, from unconditional care. And when you live like that for a long time, you will realize that you have not lost anything. You have only expanded yourself. Someone asked me, "But if I live altruistically, but others do not, won't I be at a disadvantage?" A very real question, and I do not deny it. There are times when you will be taken advantage of, there are times when you give without being paid back. There are times when others misunderstand your heart. But I also discovered one thing, when you live with a good heart for a long time, you no longer need others to repay you. Because living like that itself makes you peaceful. That peace is the greatest asset a person can possess. In the early years of building the company, we encountered many difficulties. Few orders, lack of capital, unstable human resources at times. A major partner refused to pay on time, pushing us to the risk of bankruptcy. Many people in the company were angry, they wanted to sue, wanted to get it right. I remained silent. I made an appointment with the company representative. I didn't blame him. I just said, "We're having a hard time, but I understand you're under pressure too. If possible, I hope you reconsider, not because of the contract but because of the people." He was silent for a long time and then said, "I have never heard anyone say that in business." 3 days later, they paid in full, and in the following years, they became our most loyal partners. If I had chosen to confront, it might not have been wrong, but I chose to dialogue with compassion, not because I was weak but because I believed. Only human hearts can touch human hearts. That is what altruism can do. Without winning, you can still achieve something greater. Once, a veteran employee was found to have made a big mistake in warehouse management, causing a loss of hundreds of millions of yen. The management proposed to fire him. I asked to see him privately. As soon as he entered, he knelt down and cried like a child. He said he had not slept for a week. I asked, if you had another chance, how would you live? He choked up, I will devote the rest of my life to making up for it. I kept him and true to his promise. 10 years later, he became one of the most respected managers. If you live only by rules, you can keep order. But if you live by forgiveness, you will nourish people's hearts. And when hearts are nourished, they will give their all for you, for the company, for things that are better than luongbang. I'm not saying that all mistakes should be forgiven. There are mistakes that need to be dealt with properly, but if you look deeply, you will see that even the wrongdoer has a pain inside. And if you understand that pain, the way you behave will change. Being forgiving does not mean being naive. It requires wisdom. It requires courage not to react immediately but to observe, not to judge but to understand. So forgiving people are not weak, they are the strongest because they are strong enough not to need to prove, not to need to retaliate, not to need to win. Being forgiving does not mean you have to give up yourself or endure everything. Many people misunderstand that forgiveness means being patient forever, letting others hurt you. It's not like that. True forgiveness is not about doing what others want, but about putting yourself in their shoes to understand them and then making the right choice. Sometimes you have to forgive, sometimes you have to be clear, sometimes you have to be tough. But no matter which way you choose, the root is still love in corporate life. I have had to discipline employees many times. But every time I do it, I ask myself if I am doing it to save them or just to satisfy my anger. If it's the latter, I won't do it. If it's the former, I will do it, but in a kind tone, by making them understand, not by hurting them. I remember an employee who was suspended for cheating on reports. He was very good, capable. When he heard the news of his suspension, he burst into tears, not because he lost his income, but because he felt he had hurt people's trust. I wrote a handwritten letter to him personally. If he still wants to do it again, the door is still open. Open. But he needed to start over from the inside. Many years later, he returned, no longer an arrogant person but a person who knows how to listen, slow down and understand others more than before. He not only returned to his old position but also became a mentor to new people. Not with skills but with the experience of someone who has fallen. That is what forgiveness is, not erasing mistakes but helping others overcome them with a stronger heart. In today's world, where everyone is busy, everyone wants to be better than others, everyone tries to protect their own part. Forgiveness is like a small stream, it is not noisy but it seeps into people's hearts. And because it is rare, it becomes precious. Someone asked me, can people live well without forgiveness? I answered, yes, but not deeply and not for long. Because a person who lives only for himself will always feel insecure. Because they know that if they stumble once, no one will stand by them. Meanwhile, a person who lives for others, even when they fall, there will still be someone to reach out and pull them up. They teach. And deep down, that's what we all want. To live among people who don't abandon each other. Altruism creates relationships that no contract can create. It makes work not a burden but a place to nourish the soul. It makes a company not just a place to make a living but a place to live a meaningful life. So I choose to live like that not because of morality, not because of religion, but because I have seen with my own eyes that altruism is the path that makes people become complete. And I believe that anyone can live like that if they dare to put others in their hearts. Even if it's just a little bit, every day, when I reach a certain age, I begin to see life with different eyes, no longer seeing everything as a battlefield to win. No longer trying to control everything, no longer seeing career or success as the only measure of a human life. I begin to feel that there is something larger operating everything. An invisible order, a will of the universe. When I talk about religion, I'm not talking about blind faith. I'm talking about something you can feel if you live long enough, deeply enough, that everything happens for a reason. That if you live kindly, honestly, and persistently, even if you take a detour, you will still arrive at the right place. I call it the flow of the universe, and I learned to live in harmony with it. When I was young, I was impatient, I wanted everything fast. Results, achievements, success. I thought if I tried hard enough, I could change everything. But then I realized that there are times when you do everything right but things still don't go as planned. You behave well, you are still misunderstood, you try your best, you still fail. At first I felt it was unfair, then I observed, then I thought deeply, then I fell silent. When I understood, the universe has its own schedule, what you need to do is live right, and when and how the results come is up to heaven and earth. From then on, I changed the way I live. I no longer try to force things to happen the way I want. I just did my best and let the flow do the rest, and strangely, things started to come more smoothly. I used to want to expand quickly, plan for growth, acquisition, market share, but one time. After a stressful meeting, I asked myself if I was going with the flow or against it. I looked back and saw that I was forcing the company to run after numbers, forgetting about people. I stopped. I told the leadership, we will grow slower but deeper. And what was the result? 3 years later, the company is more sustainable than ever. Less risk, less cracks, less conflicts. Because everyone is moving in the same rhythm. I started to believe in the natural rhythm of everything. A tree does not grow in a day, a child does not mature overnight, a heart does not become steadfast in a month. Everything needs time, needs to settle, needs to understand. And when you live in that rhythm, you find life much gentler. When I say in harmony with the flow of the universe stay, many people misunderstand that I advocate giving up, but no, absolutely not. Living with the flow does not mean sitting still and waiting, but proactively living well without clinging to the results. It is a very difficult art of living because we are taught to try, to control, to grasp everything. But the older I get, the more I see that the best things in my life come not from calculation but from the moments when I live fully and let everything come naturally. Imagine you are rowing a boat. If you row against the current, you will get tired. If you let go, you drift aimlessly. But if you understand the current, choose the right direction, use just enough strength, you will go very far without exhaustion. Life is the same, you cannot control everything, but you can adjust yourself to go in the right direction. You can live truthfully, do the right thing, think good thoughts, and then you just move forward, no tension, no pressure, no hurry. Many times in my life, the greatest opportunities do not come from rigorous preparation, that comes from unexpected relationships. One time I was invited to speak to a group of young entrepreneurs. I intended to decline because of my busy schedule, but somehow I agreed. During that conversation, there was a person sitting quietly at the back of the room. Many months later, he became the person who connected me with a charity organization, which opened up a series of community support activities that I had never thought of. If I had declined that day, I might not have met that person and I wouldn't have embarked on such a humane journey. From then on, I learned one thing: live with an open heart. Because you don't know what's coming. The universe has plans for you that you don't even know, but you just meet them. When you are strong enough, kind enough, and patient enough to wait, I started to wake up earlier, eat slower, talk less. I observe more, listen more carefully. I am no longer constrained by schedules but follow the rhythm of life. I see flowers blooming in front of my house. I see old people smiling on the bus. I see the morning light through the crack in the door. These things seem small but they soothe my soul more than any success. And when the mind is soothed, you begin to live as part of the flow. You no longer feel separate. You no longer need to be precise, you just live. And that is what makes you profound. You will panic when winter comes. But if you understand that everything has a cycle, you will calmly go through even the coldest days of your life. I have been betrayed, misunderstood, done wrong, felt like I could not stand up. But I do not despair because I know winter will pass. What you need is to keep a small fire inside to warm yourself. And that fire is the belief that the universe does not abandon anyone who lives a good life. There are nights when I wake up in the middle of a dream, feeling something very clearly. I am just a small creature in this vast world. But at the same time, I also feel that I am an indispensable part of the whole, and that makes me peaceful. I started to look at others with a gentler eye. I no longer get angry easily, no longer want to determine who wins or loses, no longer think that I am better than anyone. I just want to live each day with full awareness, diligence, and love. Because I know that every small action of mine, if I follow that flow, will have an invisible impact that I cannot fully anticipate. Just like when you throw a pebble into the lake, the ripples spread far and wide. Living right is the same. You may not see the results right away, but what you do, what you think, what you choose today all become part of a larger flow. And that flow will gradually take you to the right place you need to go. You do not need to become an extraordinary person by defeating others. You just need to live true to the best part of yourself. And if you can do that every day, step by step, with each small thing, then you have lived an extraordinary life. Thank you for accompanying me to the last page of this book. A journey without noise, without drama, but enough to inspire awakens a quiet concern in people's hearts. How to live without waste. We have just gone through each fold of Americo's thought, a person who started from zero. Not rebellious, not privileged, not naturally talented, but sober enough not to live as people tell and courageous enough to live according to what he believes is right. This book does not give you a formula for success, does not teach how to get rich, does not promise to change your life in 7 days. It only poses a very difficult but also very straightforward question. If you want to live differently, start with your personality, not with slogans but with the way you treat your colleagues when no one is looking. By the way you think about others when they are hurt, by the way you choose the kind path when shortcuts are always available. If there is anything that remains in you after listening, I hope it is not admiration for the author but a quiet question directed at yourself. What am I living by? And if you do not have an answer, that is okay. Actually, a person who begins to ask is already on the move. If you find this book valuable, please leave a review. Not so I know you've heard it, but so that those who come after you have a chance to stop in the middle of a noisy world and read something worth reading. And if there is a book, a work that has made you sit still for a long time after closing it, please suggest it to me. Because sometimes it is you, not me, who is leading the way for the next journey. See you in another book. Music.